Hey everybody, Ed here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share a quick update on the ASUS Transformer Pad TF701 because as of today, November the 18th of 2013, ASUS has begun to roll out over-the-air version 4.3 of Jelly Bean. So basically, in order to get this latest version, if you don't automatically get an update like we see right here that a system update is available, which you could just tap to actually download and install, you want to just jump into Settings, go down to About, then touch System Update, and that's exactly where you'll then hit Check Update. Of course, it's already checked here because it automatically prompted me with the latest update, which is version 10.26.1.7. It's a 273 megabyte download, so I'm going to go ahead and say yes. We are connected over Wi-Fi. They're reminding you that if you are tethering over your smartphone, that you will incur charges because data is usually tiered. Some customers still have unlimited grandfathered packages, or of course there are still unlimited packages being sold, but the idea is that ASUS wants to make sure you don't get burned in the process of downloading that 200 plus megabyte firmware update. So basically, you can see the update is downloading, and this will give you a pretty good idea of how well the Wi-Fi performs. Again, as usual, I am nowhere near my router currently, and things are rolling pretty fast. We're already at 25%, and so far in my experience, Wi-Fi has been relatively solid. But let's talk about what this update really brings to the table. As far as I know, in terms of what ASUS has publicly released regarding this latest update to 4.3, essentially we're getting improved battery life, improved functionality out of the touchpad, because even in my update you could see that it works relatively well, but it's far from perfect at this point. And then overall, I believe they're also focusing on the actual connectivity with the tablet itself. Now, I'm not sure how much they can do in the way of a firmware update regarding that. There have been some build quality concerns regarding that. I have not had any issues with my keyboard dock, the mobile dock, or the tablet itself. No connectivity problems, but some users do have loose connections. I think that relates more to the actual hardware, the physical connection, proprietary port there on the tablet itself. It's a little bit more of a loose fit than previous generations of the Transformer, so that's something that I've also noticed in my use of the TF701. So the TF700, a very tight fit when docked. This tablet has a little bit more give, but even with that give, I haven't actually experienced any type of disconnects, which has been one of the more common quality control issues. As far as dead pixels and backlight bleed, I've already mentioned I have little to none of either of those, which is impressive coming from ASUS. Also, no issues with the actual bezel in terms of things being glued. It actually seems like this is one of the first tablets, at least in my experience with ASUS, where they have gotten it right out of the box for the first time. And that also speaks to the software itself. Relatively lag-free. If you were to compare this to something like TouchWiz UI, this is a much more stock experience, closer to something like the Nexus offering. With that said, we finally finished our download, a little over 3 minutes. Let's go ahead and install. We'll see how long the whole process takes. I'm doing this on the fly as usual, like all of my videos. The device is powering down, but what I want to focus on is that you are getting this clamshell experience, and I will be comparing this device directly to the Samsung Galaxy Note 10.1 2014 edition, because I know that's going to be one of the more common comparisons out there, and for good reason. You're looking at a $450 device that, when paired with the actual keyboard dock, which extends battery life to what ASUS is quoting at roughly 17 hours, but realistically from what I'm seeing, it's more about 14 to maybe 15 if you're very lucky, depending on what type of usage you're actually throwing at this device. The point is that you're paying the same amount as you would for just getting the Galaxy Note 10.1 2014 edition in the 32 gigabyte capacity without even a protective case. So a lot to be said in terms of the value play with this tablet. Build quality is definitely very solid, and that's one area that I was quite impressed. But right now you can take a good look at the screen, and really most of what you'll see is just dust. No dust under the screen. That's another thing that a lot of people complain about, and I've seen that with a lot of different tablets. This wouldn't be the first or the last, But what I can tell you is that so far I've yet to notice anything, and generally I have a good eye for those things, to say the least. No tablet manufacturer is perfect when it comes to this, including the Fruit Company, but ASUS really has turned it around, in my opinion. So whatever negative comments you're reading right now regarding build quality, I would say don't let that affect your decision directly. Just make sure you're purchasing this from a retailer that will allow you to exchange it or get a refund if there is something materially defective with the product. But so far, this is one of the best pieces of hardware and, frankly, values that ASUS has ever brought to the market in my experience so far. Still wish they would have put 2 speakers on this device for a full stereo environment, but nonetheless, that single speaker right there on the left side is still loud. I do like that it has a aluminum backing. That's something that we're seeing less and less of, and even tablets like the Galaxy Note that I've been referencing, all plastic, and that is something that I would like to see. But there are disadvantages to having that metallic build, such as actual weight. We're still in the process of the update here, and the physical weight is material. You know, a tablet like this is a little bit heavier than the Galaxy Note, but principally, in my opinion, this is far more of a productivity machine for the average user than something like the Galaxy Note, and that's because of the keyboard dock experience. It really does turn it into an Ultrabook replacement, something that a lot of people are going to compare to Surface Pro. Forget about just Surface 2, I mean Surface Pro 2, of course, but the direct comparison to Surface 2 would be the most accurate one because of the keyboard capability, but it isn't a really feasible comparison, even though it can be made, just because ASUS has been in the business longer. They have more experience at making these sorts of hybrids, and in my opinion, there's a reason that they've done such a nice job here, and that's because they know that they have a lot at stake in this flagship product. This update is principally a critical one for this product because, as I mentioned in my unboxing, there was no update out of box. This update to 4.3 has been over the air overseas, but apparently was held for a period of time before the official release today on the 18th here in the US. But it's significant because, like I said, you know, whether it's extending the battery life, fixing some of the docking connectivity issues. By the way, that was specifically, as I mentioned, not the hardware that it's addressing, but an actual update regarding how the dock charges the tablet. Because as I mentioned in a previous video or update, the dock is supposed to charge always the tablet. In other words, topping off the tablet constantly so that you deplete the built-in battery in the keyboard dock prior to the tablet itself, which of course is what makes sense. Still updating here. And that is something I guess some users have been having issues with. I haven't seen that problem here with my tablet, but there have been reports, so that's yet another thing that has been tweaked in this update. Also, all the niceties of 4.3, you know, the enhancements of multiple accounts, and now actually being able to shield them to a degree so that you can designate them specifically as, you know, for a child and put certain filters on. Those are enhancements that have been brought to this version. And so far, I like the relatively stock experience that ASUS has put together here. It's very similar to what they've done with previous Transformers, and that's why it's going to be a welcomed addition and update to current TF700 owners. I do think this is a fantastic update. A lot of TF700 owners out there are probably wondering if it's a legitimate one. It's not just about the increase in resolution. In fact, I'll be the first one to say that the increased resolution isn't really necessarily a selling point when it comes to this tablet. I think the USB 3.0 port is a big enhancement for the keyboard dock. I think the increased battery life is a big enhancement, but most importantly, that Tegra 4 quad-core processor blows away the Tegra 3. It's as simple as that. No matter how much overclocking you can throw at a Tegra 3, this latest A15 chip that's in here is right up there with the Snapdragon 800, as well as the Exynos 5 in the Galaxy Note 10.1 2014. So you have a competent performing processor. It does struggle a little bit with these higher resolutions, as do all of the top-tier mobile chips right now. There really isn't one processor that I can say that has absolutely no problem. There's no question that the Galaxy Note 10.1 in terms of graphics We'll do better on the 3D end of things. Part of this 4.3 update does address that, but I'm not going to really get into that. It's far more technical. It doesn't really directly address that, but at least sets up NVIDIA's platform, the Tegra platform, for enhanced 3D performance. Even though this is technically capable of 4K output, the Tegra 4 that is, in terms of practical applications now, there isn't really any tangible use for it. But overall, as I mentioned, the Tegra 4 is beyond competent. In fact, in my experience, this out of the box, meaning the Transformer TF701, is actually a smoother device in terms of its general operation and function than the Galaxy Note 10.1 out of the box, before at least it had its 3 updates that it's seen over the course of its launch. Seems like the update is finally finishing up now, so I'll be at least able to share with all of you what this looks like. I think the launcher may have been revamped also. I'm just expecting good things because ASUS is a veteran in this business. It started with netbooks, and this was the evolution of their business model, at least in terms of finding something very successful for them in a niche that really didn't exist. They were the first to really get the Transformer going. And we're now on to the updates, so getting closer, as you can see, slowly but surely. And they did estimate up to an hour. I can assure you this is not going to take an hour to do this update. But that's why I'm just giving a general update through the course of this video. Beyond, clearly that was a demo for those of you curious how to get the over-the-air update. But the entire balance here you have between that full-size USB port, a micro SD card slot on board on the tablet for storage expansion, full-size SD card slot on the keyboard dock, mobile dock. You're looking at over 200 at least possible gigs of storage space with the 32 gigs on board, up to 256. So that's a lot of storage space because of the 2 additional slots here. And the only thing I really wish this tablet had was a micro USB port for charging and transfer. That's something that has become standard even for companies like Samsung, who still are very expensive manufacturers, but an expensive manufacturer, excuse me, but they have given up on the proprietary charging game. ASUS had to stick with it, though, because they do have the docking feature. I understand that, but it still would have been nice for them to throw another port on there so that we would have the ability to actually still charge the device. But nonetheless, charging time, that's another thing I haven't addressed. Battery life is fantastic. Well over 10 hours with the tablet alone. ASUS puts it at 14 hours, I believe, or 13, but I'm seeing over 10, which is definitely best in class out there. But that's also to do with the Tegra 4, no question about it. But when you add the dock, which is estimated an additional 4, you are looking at literally getting just about that, about 14 hours, I would say, total, which is best in class. There's nothing else like it. You're not going to find a computer, a laptop, an Ultrabook, pretty much anything on the market that's going to give you this much computing power for that amount of time, balanced with one of the highest pixel density screen ratios out there. Granted, I don't feel that the screen is as impressive as what the Galaxy Note 10.1 2014 has to offer. It's still pretty much bar none in terms of being top of the class. Still going through updates here. As you can see, we're now up to, the mobile dock firmware is now updating, so I think it completed the other updates for just the Android OS, and now we're moving on to the mobile dock. But this, again, will give you a very good idea of exactly how long the 4.3 update is going to take. You cannot roll back from this update. This tablet does have root pre 4.3. I'm pretty sure it's lost after the update, but I stand to be corrected if inaccurate. So basically right now you can't undo this update if you install it, but you really shouldn't hesitate. This will only improve this device. ASUS is one of those companies, not that there are companies that don't want to improve on their devices, but they really know that the only way to earn continued support from their customers and return business is by continuing to update their products and improve upon them. And their quality control has been their Achilles. in the past. There's no question those of you who've gone through all of the generations and pretty much all of the Transformer models like myself know that you may have a love-hate relationship, or maybe all love, but QC has never been their strong suit, and it seems like they've turned the corner a little bit. Granted, in this form, I will say that even though the tablet has pretty solid build with the aluminum backing, the keyboard dock has been downgraded. The USB 3.0 port is great, and of course the full-size SD card slot is something we already had, but the entire plastic build and feel, and the fact that we do have a little bit more give now in the docking section, which is probably why there are so many connectivity issues. And when I say so many, I don't have an accurate number on actual percentages. It could be a very small percentage, because after all, the amount of people that actually love and enjoy their product, they're far less apt to actually be out there bragging about it as opposed to the people who are having issues. And that's true of just about anything in life, let alone consumer electronics like tablets such as this. So in large part, you're going to see, the negative comments come out of the woodwork far more often than the positive ones. And that's sad, because right now I do think this is one of the best tablets ever made. I often say that about products I review, but that's because I only focus on quality products. And that's just true again yet here with the TF701. You're getting an incredible package, an incredible value, and it all really comes down to whether or not you need the keyboard dock. Granted, alone, this tablet is a fantastic value with its balance of hardware between the quad-core processor, the 2 gigs of RAM, the Bluetooth, and of course that 2560 by 1600 resolution IPS display, which outclasses the current generation iPad. That alone in itself, paired with Corning Gorilla Glass, the third version now, really should sell itself as a tablet, but there's a lot of bezel that turns some people off. In my opinion, it's not a big deal. It's really more a matter of accommodating the form factor of the keyboard dock. You can see still updating the firmware on the mobile dock. We're up to 43%, and hopefully I haven't put all of you to sleep. I'm really focusing on what I've experienced with this tablet so far, because I know that if I was like yourself getting ready to select between this, the Galaxy Note 10.1 2014, or thinking about waiting for the next Nexus 10, which really no information has trickled out about. Some people think it's been scrapped. Others think they have a firm date or idea of when it's going to be coming out. The fact remains that this and the Galaxy Note 10.1 2014 really, in my opinion, are the best tablets in the entire market right now, including the iPad Air. And that's because they really all offer an entire they have different identities, first of all, from any other tablet, whereas I feel like the iPad is the most generic of any tablet out there. It's just a media consumption device, and that's pretty much its role. Whereas, the Transformer has its identity of really trying to replace a computer. The Note has an identity of really trying to replace your notebook, a traditional pen and paper, but having all of the intelligence of the latest and greatest hardware. So you have two completely different experiences. That's the beauty of Android, in my opinion, and it's not really a matter of being in love with Android. It's just a matter of being in love with flexibility and also some pricing, which, as I've mentioned here, ASUS is well aware that part of what makes an attractive product is affordability. And they've done that here. I mean, this is clearly a far more attractive product for many consumers than going out and purchasing something like an Ultrabook, because why spend $800 when you can get a device like this for $600 plus tax, give or take, and you're set, you're good to go. Yes, you can't run Office on here, but there are plenty of applications that are arguably just as good for light computing. The only thing that really is missing from the keyboard dock, besides a little bit better, firmer build quality, is better feedback from the touchpad, which this update should bring, but a backlit keyboard is what it's really missing. When I think of things like Surface 2 and Surface Pro 2, and the fact that both of them now have updated keyboards with backlighting, I wish at this $140 price point, ASUS would have had the vision to finally add a backlight system. That is probably one of the biggest missing things from this incredible package, because otherwise this machine screams. The value is there, and really this has rectified every possible complaint that the TF700 brought. Specifically, the big issue with the TF700 was internal memory performance, and that is now rectified, because the internal memory here on this tablet is basically just as fast as every other top tier tablet right now, whether you're comparing that to the iPad or the Galaxy Note 10.1 2014. So right now, there's really very little to dislike about this tablet, except for maybe its actual looks, the bezel, and of course, if you do get a model that has quality control issues. Looks like the update is now finally done. It's telling me not to plug in the power. Good thing I'm not plugging it in. I know you guys got a little bit washed out there by the lighting, but I'm glad it didn't tell me that I had to plug it in at this point, because that would have been anticlimactic to say the least. But again, this really does represent, in my opinion, the maturation of a brand that has had a lot of potential and a lot of hits as well as a lot of misses. And thankfully, Asus has stuck with it. That's in large part, though, speaking to the fact that consumers have come back to it, despite how many complaints you may find on different forums about quality controls I've mentioned over and over again. At the end of the day, if you look at Amazon and look at those reviews, you will see in large part most people don't really care necessarily about the I/O performance unless they actually see it. And a lot of the average consumers that pick this up aren't pressing it and trying to turn it into a computer. They're trying to use it as a tablet that just does a whole lot more than an Apple product or, let's say, a Nexus device, because of all the extra functionality between the USB 3.0 port, full-size SD card slot, general memory storage expansion in general. Those are things that, of course, a Nexus or Apple device simply does not offer. So there are so many things to like about this tablet. Right now, I'm still torn on whether or not I think it's better than the Galaxy Note 10.1 2014 edition. Of course, as I've mentioned earlier, I really think that this and the Note are the two tablets to beat right now. But pricing is definitely on this tablet side. Software, now finally, it'll at least have caught up to the Note 10.1 2014. It'll have hit 4.3, which is still updating. We're 22 minutes in, and this is still going. But I'm not shocked. It is a hefty update. It was, I think, 235 megs, and it is covering a lot of things. So it makes sense that it's going to take a while to update. But again, you can see really no backlight bleed, which is very impressive. My fingerprints are there, but no backlight bleed. And on that note, I'll mention, in terms of being a fingerprint magnet, not bad at all. I mean, the back cover, the brushed aluminum, really, it picks up. It will collect some grime, but that's over really extended use, and that's easy to just wipe down with pretty much any kind of, cleaning cloth. You won't have an issue. As far as the plastic bottom of the keyboard or mobile dock, that really doesn't pick up fingerprints at all. They tried to give it a brushed aluminum, even though, of course, it's faux because it's completely plastic, no question about it. The little rubber feet are fine. I just really wish, as I mentioned earlier in the video, they would have retained the design of the previous generations of docks, but I think this is one of the areas it kind of gave up, or Asus gave up, in favor of actually, rectifying margins. Here we go. The update is finally done. And so we're looking at almost 24 minutes. And you can see right now, first thing I'll notice, and this is interesting, and some of you may have noticed this at the beginning of the video, prior to installing the update, it had shown on the widget that I have for the actual battery life of both the pad and keyboard, because it does separate them, it had shown basically a full charge just for the pad itself. It was not showing a charge on the keyboard dock. But clearly after the update, we're now seeing a charge on both. So already you can see one of those enhancements coming into play. Clearly that's already a difference. We're getting battery life for both. So that was a bug already corrected out of the box. Now in terms of web browsing, I'm just going to go ahead and see if anything looks different here, because I'm curious to see if there's a tangible performance difference. I mean, things are still flying, but let's see the touchpad, because as I mentioned before, that was something that was supposed to have been rectified. I had noticed that the mouse occasionally would disappear. In fact, it looks like right now, you may notice I'm not seeing the mouse. And these are things, again, that software does have to address. It's, just frankly the way it works. See if I can clear that out. I don't think there's... I'm going to check if there are any other updates. I don't believe that there are, but I'm just checking. Because, I'm not seeing the mouse. And this is something that I noticed. It's only happened a couple of times, and usually it's rectified by just unmounting the actual tablet, which I'll do. But right there, you can see we are now up to version 4.3. So we are finally updated, and the build number is there. So basically, we've come full circle. It took, well over 20 minutes. In terms of the accounts I was mentioning, you can see right here, we have the user accounts, which were present before, but now should have been enhanced. As far as if we add an account, you can see restricted profile. I'm not going to go through this right now, but those are some of the regular niceties of 4.3. But back to the web browsing, things did look pretty good, by the way. It reformats. That's something I didn't demo or didn't mention in previous demos, which is nice. This is, again, ASUS's own browser, but it does auto format, which is definitely a nice thing when you zoom in rather than just literally zooming in. But in terms of the touchpad, a little close here. Let me try scrolling here and see how we do. Still no mouse functionality, so let me go ahead and connect this again. And this is what I'm talking about. These are some of the bugs that, shouldn't be there, but in this case are. But hopefully, rectified sooner rather than later. Let's see. Now we have a mouse, and that pretty much makes my point right there. So let's see what the scrolling is like, if it's improved. Go ahead and actually get over a surface so that we can scroll. You can see I'm doing gestures here, trying to get some performance here. ESPN, not the best site. Let's go over to Engadget. I'm not really seeing a difference right now, not a tangible one at least. It's taking me through a little hand holding here. Didn't need that. Just do a search. And again, going to try some scrolling. I actually do think that the scrolling seems to have improved a little bit. Engadget's a little bit more friendly to do this with, since there's no pinch to zoom capability on their site, even though this is not capable of pinch to zoom with gestures. But it seems to be a little bit tighter. The mouse also a little bit tighter from what I can tell. But, I'll have to spend more time with it and see if there's anything else to it. In terms of other things, battery life, as I mentioned throughout the entire course of this video, is really all of what this update specifically addressed. So it'll be interesting to see how much it enhances it, or if we just get closer to those original estimates that ASUS put out, which again stand at 14 hours for the tablet alone, 13 hours for the tablet alone, and 17 when combined with the keyboard dock. Industry top, and clearly one of the big selling points beyond the fact that you are getting this keyboard experience. But I think today served as not only a good example of what it takes to update to 4.3 on the Transformer Pad TF701, but also seeing the quirks, seeing that we're losing the mouse, and seeing that I had to reconnect. That's one of the things that unfortunately right now is still an issue despite the update. And at the price point, I can't say that it's acceptable, but certainly, again, you are paying less than something like the Galaxy Note 10.1. That doesn't mean you should expect lower quality, but nonetheless, it is part of what comes with ASUS right now out of the box. But overall, everything else works extremely well. In fact, I was using HBO Go today with the tablet, and for some reason couldn't get it to work on the Note 10.1 2014, but it was working perfectly well right here on the Transformer. And with this 2560 by 1600 resolution screen, which is not a huge upgrade in resolution from the previous gen TF700, the actual IPS panel type is a huge upgrade. So that's where, despite myself not being necessarily sold on pixel density, the actual panel type is a major improvement. And again, the glass, no give here, really completely solid on this tablet, no flex. So a lot about build quality here today and functionality beyond just the update. So a little bit of both. Hope you all enjoyed this video. So far, really pleased with this tablet despite the few bugs that it has, because again, it's just simply unmatched in the marketplace. Incredible battery life, great performance for gaming and multitasking in general, and some pretty good stock software from ASUS out of the box. Not a lot of bloat. Enjoying it. Look forward to giving you more updates. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. And of course, as usual, please feel free to subscribe. Later.